Welcome back to the Totem Confidence Podcast. I'm your host, Ahmad. Got a special treat. Long time in coming. Happy to return the honor. Good brother who I first met, actually discovered his program searching on the internet for Enneagram podcast in typical 5 manner. And I discovered his podcast is doing it for the gram. I nerded out to it, reached out to him, and we collaborated a couple of times. But there's a saying, familiarity can breed contempt, and we're not going to do that. I want to give this brother his props and not just, oh yeah, this brother has put in a lot of work. So I'm going to kind of introduce you to him, and then he's going to introduce you better than I can do you. This is Milton Stewart, MBA, founder of Kaizen Careers Coaching and Consulting. Loves facilitating the Enneagram and helping people feel seen. He is one of the very few African-American male Enneagram teachers in the world, and I attest to that. With 15 plus years of experience, Milton has been a student of the Enneagram before it was mainstream and popular. Old school Enneagram. He has seen how the Enneagram can heal and help many people. Milton brings a new perspective and believes the Enneagram is more than just a personal tool, but a map of how to truly honor the humanity of others. He uses the Enneagram in many ways, but the most powerful way he uses it is in spaces of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Milton is the first African-American male International Enneagram Association Global Board member. And prior to full-time working in the Enneagram space, he worked in education. He helped adult students who were working to achieve their high school diplomas. He also worked as an administrator in an elementary school, providing tools for the students and staff to succeed. Kaizen Careers is his business, and Kaizen is the Japanese word for continuous improvement. The goal of Kaizen Career and Leadership Services is to provide clients with not only professional coaching, but also to design a blueprint for moving forward and improving themselves as they move throughout their lives. Milton Stewart, brother, how you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm thankful you invited me on your show, man. For real. Feeling good.
Happy, man. Honored to have you, brother. Now, how did you first discover? Let's take it back to the beginning, How did you first discover the Enneagram?
I was stuffing my face full of food first and foremost, which I do a lot. Um, at the time young adult minister's house. This was I don't know 16, 17 years ago, probably by now. 50, I don't know, somewhere in there. And he brings out this blue book, and he's like, this big blue book, and it's like, who wants to take a personality test? And I'm like, yeah, I love this stuff. Let's do it. I'm ready, right? And that we all come to know that's the wisdom of the Enneagram. If you don't know,
Yes,
if no one knows, it,
yes,
it's
yes.
it's yeah. Um, and so he does the 2 question test that's in the book for everybody, because it's probably, I don't know, 12 of us in the room, 12, 13 of us in the room. And I get my 2 letters right, and for the 2 question test. And he starts reading the first 2 paragraphs, which are like all the good things about your type structure. I'm like, yes. I'm in the room like, say more, please. Keep telling the people, tell the people about me, right? And then the next 2 paragraphs though are the total opposite. And then I'm sitting there like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I have to check on that. I don't know if this is true. But it's really, it's not just behaviors, it's patterns. Even patterns that other people may not see of what may be going on beneath the surface. So that really caught me. And as a 7, right, as a type 7, like I have a tendency to be easily able to escape from things, right? That may pin me down. But if something is intellectually stimulating enough to pin me and to peg me like, oh, this is real, now I'm interested. And now I have to go learn more. So when I left the house that night, man, I Googled every Enneagram thing I could find. Now, there was not nearly as much stuff out there as there is now, like not even close. It was like, honestly, it was like I think 2 podcasts on the Enneagram out there. Like
Mm,
that's it. And every book that I could find. So I just started just consuming Enneagram information, like left and right. Every book I could find, every podcast I could find, anything. And that really led me to learning about it, but also mistyping a lot of people first, because you get real fascinated and you like, I read about you, right? And you base it all on their behavior and
Yeah,
not the patterns and the
yeah,
motivations.
yeah.
And so I did a lot of that very young, but I was so excited. I just kept telling people and sharing it. And man, that eventually led to um, quite a few things, but that eventually led to me not only sharing it with different groups and eventually doing like workshops, but then eventually getting certified and then eventually becoming a teacher. And then eventually it's a, it's quite a story because I didn't see it ever happening this way or ever using this tool. But it kept weaving its way back in my life and kept being like, this is a great avenue for you to be able to do great things in the world. And I was like, oh, you know, so it's that's a part of it. I can break down more if you want me to. But that's how it kind of that's how it found and I found it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, because you being from Memphis, I lived in Memphis for 2 years. That's
Mhm.
not the typical Memphis story of a young black man getting into this type of work. Not that
Not
there's
at
not
all.
people with self awareness, but just genuinely, speaking, or generally speaking. So, what did your friends and family think when you first started talking about this Enneagram thing, and how have their views of you and this Enneagram thing evolved over the years?
So um there's two things I think that when you asked that question that came up for me. One thing was that they thought I was a little weird. They was like, what? And then you mess around and show them the symbol and they're like, what is that? Like, is that connected to something, demonic? Like, no, it's not at all. Um, so first it was like, first they barely listen. That was the first thing, to be honest. Like, it's like a barely listen. Like a lot of times they put it in the same box they put in um MBTI or
Hmm.
any other personality. They kind of put it in that same box. And so it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then like, it's like not really paying attention. But I'm over here like, no, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. This is a life game changer right
Yeah,
here, right?
for sure.
And so it's kind of, and it was in that same box for them at first, and then, still a step below astrological symbols, especially in the Black community. Like those things are huge in our community.
Yeah.
Whether we really know what they really connect to or not, it's still a big deal. But
Mhm.
it's not up there necessarily when I'm first introducing it. And plus, I didn't know it well enough to speak to them in a way that it hits and grabs. Um, And the second thing was really helpful is because around, even though like I'm type 7, around my family, I actually show up like a 5 because
Mhm.
there's so much energy. It's so much like intense, loud energy when we get together that I fall back into my 5, man.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
people come to me, I don't go to people necessarily. People come to me and they ask questions. And so I'm always the one sharing something that is like conceptual or deep or intellectual and thinking on that lens because it's so much energy. I'm like, that's too much for me. I'm gonna pull it back. So really, my cousins, they really call me, we had these little t-shirts, where you get, I'm the such and such cousin, I'm the such and such cousin.
Yeah.
And they had like me, I was the cool cousin because
Mhm.
I'm not like
Mhm.
super active and things. I'm just like chill. I'm really more chill. And they're always like, he's gonna say something intellectual, use a big word. So yeah, man. That was their first response. Their first kind of responses was kind of like, oh, that's interesting, cool. And then as I learned more, people cling to a little bit more, but it thought I was weird and thought it was just like some little MBTI thing, like, oh, that's
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah. 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 I could dig that. So, for you and your personal journey, like, what is the difference between Milton Stewart today and the Milton Stewart that first found this system of this tool, man, of just great utility?
Ooh, man. The Milton now, he knows how to follow through on stuff. Despite being despite when I'm not no longer stimulated or excited by it. My podcast is one of the best examples.
Mm,
At first, when I started my podcast, I was so excited. I as a seven, when I'm excited, I can do anything. I can build anything and start from anywhere, right? The
mhm,
issue with sevens is like when we're not excited, we'll drop something in a heartbeat. No matter what we started, no matter what phase it's in, we'll just move on to the next thing that stimulates us. And so we never really follow through. But
mm,
with the podcast, at the beginning, it was very difficult because I was doing everything. Like I was editing, I was figuring out how to use a mic, all this stuff.
mhm,
Man, it's just a bunch. Um, and so, there's parts of it that stop being exciting because I'm like working hours and hours, like I'm working a regular job at the school, but I'm also recording a podcast, editing it, trying to make sure it's good. And then also the fear of saying something out loud and putting it into the space that's going to be out there, and then people can judge you and talk about
mhm,
you. And what if you said it wrong and all this stuff? So, uh, it was a lot of energy into all that. But I learned to follow through on the podcast because I found that I was really helping people. And I was like, oh, that people, I started to get feedback, right? After a while, like, I was like, people were sending me like messages and saying, like, this really helped me. I really appreciate this. And I was like, oh, dang, I'm doing some good works.
mm,
So
mm,
it pushed me to go through the threshold of like having to be excited in order to keep going, right? Because that's egoic for me. That's just
yeah,
for me then, right? It's not for other people. It's just it's selfishly like if I'm excited about it, I do it. If I don't, whatever. But
yeah,
if this is something that I'm delivering to the world as something
mhm,
that's a tool of liberation, help, healing, growth, all that, then it's not just about me anymore, right? It's bigger than me. So that helped push me to push through that. So I follow through on things way more now, right?
mm,
Instead of just dropping them. Not to say I still don't drop some stuff I get excited about, but I'm more cautious in the big things. Those things I'm very serious about that I work on following through. That's one thing. So that's one big difference.
mhm.
My follow through game is
Big
big.
one. Yeah.
Uh, the
Mm,
the next one is, man, my emotions, bro. As a black man, we're trained, we're reared not to emote or not to get into our emotions, right? The only emotion that's acceptable is anger, technically,
yes.
right? But
Yes.
in our black community, but in the white community, the anger is not accepted. So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother conundrum we could talk about another day. But you know, I learned to actually dive into all of my emotions and that none of my emotions make me weak. None of them,
Mm,
right? They're all
mm,
needed. And for me to heal and for me to grow, I have to dive into all of them. I have to dive into the sadness. I have to dive into the fear. I have to dive into what's the other emotion? The anger, right?
yeah.
All of these things I needed to
Yeah.
dive into. I have a natural, tendency to mess around with happiness and be all in this area. But
Yeah.
I had to dive into learning what true joy is too, because a lot of it wasn't just
Um,
deep and real, true joy. I had to learn that because I can't really access the full version of it until I'm start accessing other emotions as well.
mm,
So
mm,
it's the Milton now compared to then, man. I understand and I love and I honor and I feel my emotions way more now. Um, and I understand their value. So this Milton's healed in a lot of different ways compared to the one at the beginning, man,
mm,
because I had to find and heal trauma that I didn't know I had in different places, like stuff we just grow up with, like racial trauma.
yeah.
You know,
Yes.
2020 started happening. My platform started to kind of grow some. People started to know me. They was like, "Oh, this black man, and it's this 2020 year. We got to get him on to say something about the Enneagram. He rare, right?"
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Because everything in our society is got. So I started speaking, bro, and I started realizing at these places, I started getting real upset, like angry and angry when I started speaking about these issues,
Mm,
like like racism issues and things going on in society, bro. Like I wasn't consciously knowing I was getting angry. All of a
mm,
sudden, I was like, oh shoot, right? And then as I started to like see the pattern, I was like, oh, you got like racial trauma, bro. You ain't processed.
mm,
You so used to
mm,
living that way and thinking it's
mm,
normal.
yeah.
Or you know what I'm saying? Like you don't even realize how much trauma you got because you started speaking about it, and before you know it, I went from 0 to 100, man,
Yeah.
in the whole
Yeah.
presentation, and people like, whoa, you know what I'm saying?
So they
So,
could feel that anger coming out. Like,
oh, bruh,
ooh,
yes.
ooh.
So, yeah, man. So I really like this question because I am like So, so different. So I'm not just gonna say change, but in many ways, I believe I'm transformed in some
Mm,
ways, in the way I handle things, the way I do things, the way I engage, the way I be, right? Not just the things I do, but how I be in the world. So my ability to meditate um, during the day for like 20 minutes straight, being
mm,
still, being silent. For a seven, that's like almost impossible when you're
yeah, yeah,
you're not
yeah,
working on it, right? Because I started
yeah.
off 5 minutes was like, are we done yet? Are we done yet? But now I can do 20. And it's
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
long to do it. Like I'd be like,
yeah.
ooh, if I miss my minutes, I'm like, I feel crazy on the inside.
Mm,
So man, it's leaps and bounds, man. Areas, yes, big difference.
that's beautiful, brother. Talk to me a little bit about the what that looks like because people will go, they like muscles.
All right.
You know what I mean? But like they see somebody that, hey man, but the actual work of doing it is not sexy. You know what I'm saying?
No.
It's but the actual end result. Talk to me about what that you talked about meditation, like what is involved in that transformation that people don't see.
Ooh, man, it's so much. The inner work is so different from the outer work we do, man. It is so different. And like the way you orient and walk the world starts to change
Mm,
because the way you see and the way you be is different in the world. So it's really interesting. Like, because we can spend so much energy trying to get externally tough or look externally a certain way,
yes.
but like to be honest, it won't get you far. You still will be trapped on the inside. And so when I started to do some of this work of understanding and worse of seeing my patterns internally, right? Because at first I thought growth was gonna be fun, bro. I was like, as a seven, I'm
Yeah.
so seven. But most people, I'm finna grow, things gonna get better. I'm just gonna feel better because I'm growing, all this type of stuff. And it was more conceptual,
Yeah.
head type of things. Like I'm just gonna be more enlightened and I'm gonna be able to say really wise things and
Yeah.
all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was getting myself into, man. I did
Yeah.
not. And I'm glad I didn't. Because if I did know, I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have taken the journey, to be honest. But I'm so thankful and grateful I have because, man, being able to be more fully yourself is crazy. So, some of the things people don't see is the internal toiling you do with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's this, and I just dropped an episode about this, but there's this like internal fight when you find something that you see that doesn't help you get to what you truly want in life. You start to see your real life patterns and how it's impacting you, and
Mm,
it's getting you maybe a fake version of what you want, or it's not getting
mm,
it at all,
mm,
and you just like it's being trapped. The last thing I want as a seven or for
yeah.
anyone is to be
Yeah.
trapped,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like you see these internal trappings that you have, and it's like I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't want to be trapped. I don't want to be imprisoned in my own body. You know what I'm saying? I can't approach certain subjects internally because I'm scared or I am hurt or I got pain and like I can't address it. That don't work for me no more. Like that doesn't work
Mm,
for me because you're basically locked in a prison inside your
yes.
own self. So you can't go anywhere and do much. You can't really experience the world. You can't really experience life. And so I was like, nah, this is not gonna work for me. So
Mm,
um a big part of that inner work is constantly making little shifts. And this is why my business Kaizen, is the thing because it's small shifts, continuous growth, just small shifts, small recognition of things going on. And it's like, okay, wow, oh, I didn't know that. How can I shift that just a little bit? And these little small shifts you keep making from new awareness that you get of yourself starts to create that transformation. So you feel stuff in your body you haven't felt before. You start feeling emotions you haven't felt before. It's like, I don't usually cry, but all of a sudden, now I can't stop crying every
yeah.
day just a little bit. Like, what the
Yeah.
world's going on, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you go through the gambit of things. You feel embarrassed. You feel humiliated at times, just internally, not even externally sometimes. It's internal, right? And you start to see that there's a whole different world inside of you that's not even, not even like overly connected to the outside world. It is obviously, but it's like there's another whole planet inside of yourself
Yes.
that we can
Yes.
explore and
Yes.
grow, learn, uncover, heal from, make sense of. Like all of these things happen internally, but we miss them because we can be so stuck externally. So it's man, the amount of work that goes into it, starting doing things that feel to opposition to your ego, but they're actually really healthy for you and good for
Yes.
you, is
Yes.
wild, right? Because it's like internally something is fighting me
Yes.
from doing something that's really good for me or healthy for me and the people around me. What the world is this? So that questioning, that awareness, that challenging, that toiling, that wrestling with those parts of you, they help you to get to a place where you start to be more and more liberated, where it's like,
Yeah.
ooh. So the feeling of once you get through a certain stage or a certain part of growth, it feels so much better. And you're
Yes.
just like, oh, it was worth the toiling I was
Yeah.
doing with myself and wrestling. It was worth it.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it doesn't feel like it in the moment. In the moment, it's like, you know what? Let me just go distract myself with whatever my pattern thing is, and
Yeah.
then just don't deal with it, and I'll be okay, right? And
Yeah.
come back up again later.
Yeah.
So man, that's the thing that people don't see, the internal work that's going on, the amount of energy you spend working on yourself and inside, um, the thoughts, the journaling, the affirmations, the going to certain things. There's so many things, right? Like the internal decisions, sometimes just to stay with stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's some things we just got to stay with inside to help grow. And then there's some stuff internally that we's like, I got to let that go. Like
Mm.
I have to work on letting whatever that is go. And why am I so attached to that? Like
Mm.
I'm putting all my eggs in a basket for this thing. And if I take just a step back and look at it from a distance, it really ain't that important.
Yeah.
But I'm attached like a mug. Like I gotta be
Yeah.
right on this. This is my thing. This is my
Yeah.
jam. It's like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
though? Is it that important?
Right. Right.
So yeah, man, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that going on.
Beautiful, brother. And I'm glad you went into great detail with that because life is based on relationships. You
Hmm.
know, you can be a billionaire, but if you don't have a good relationship with the people that are around you, you just got stuff, you know.
Yep.
And so I think we put so much emphasis on things and success, but you talked about internal things. Just and I love that you said small, like you talked about like incremental change because it's not like this big bang theory where you just grow and you just become this person. It's like every day, and just the personal accountability, man. So that's beautiful. So both of us being Black men, and the Black American experience is a very unique experience. We can tell people outside of our culture these experiences, but they're just internal things that they would not understand. How do you see this work as being beneficial to our people? You know, as far as just in relationships and in just personal relationships, business relationships. Like, how do you personally see this as being beneficial?
Man. So one thing that I think is very important, I was telling one of my communities, one, I think it is important for us to be able to find our type and to be helped or guided to help find our type. Honestly, as soon as possible, since you learn about the Enneagram. And I say that personally for me, because I feel like when you start to understand your motivations and your patterns, for people of color, Black people specifically in our country here in America, like it could be detrimental to your life depending on you understanding how you operate and what's happening, how you affect other people, how you affect yourself, the choices you make here. And like to me, it's very important, right? I don't believe in sitting around and just letting a person meander for a long time to figure
Mm.
out their own thing. I don't believe in that for a lot of different reasons, which I won't go into right here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I say that because I see the Enneagram when you talk about helping Black communities. Man, we got to realize we got so much trauma. It's crazy. Like trauma is baked so much into our regular day lives now. Like
Yes.
that's the thing.
Yes.
And we're
Yes.
so used to it that we
Yes.
don't even know it. So you have so many hurt Black people like going around, hurt people. Like
Yes.
it's just, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's like understanding that it's not just a person like I'm just going to make a bad choice today, or I'm going to make a choice that is like going to hurt someone else or myself, and they're just making it all out of this like all the realms of like great thinking and their great health, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to make a bad quote unquote decision today. It don't
Yeah.
work like that. Like
Yeah.
our environment, first and foremost, is really messed up in
Yeah.
so many ways that we
Yeah.
don't realize. So the Enneagram like for especially Black people, on top of being able to heal so that we can see our patterns, it actually helps liberate us too, right? It's that journey of saying like we have so many limiting beliefs because of things we've been, one, by our type structure, but also by society. And so we've already mentally put ourselves in a certain block. And it's like we're not able to go outside of that block mentally. So as long as we do that, we're not gonna be able to move anything or do anything new, or I choose to do something different. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, because this is a Black response to this situation. It's like, okay, yeah, but I don't have to respond that way though, right? I'm
Yes.
still
Yes.
Black, even if I don't respond that way,
Yes.
or
Yes.
react that way, to be honest.
Yes.
So it's very important to help us heal, to help us notice what trauma is going on, what patterns are going on, how we feel like about ourselves, our self-esteem, our dignity, right? Because as we grow internally, you start to develop like wealth, internal wealth, right? Where it's like that wealth is like self-esteem, it's like value. And when
Yeah.
you recognize that how much value you have on the inside, the external things that make up our cultural values don't don't impress you as much. You don't have to
Mhm.
give into them as much. You don't have to do things that are so impressive that, AKA, use all your money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that you can't really build the wealth you want to build,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or or you're just trying to impress, so you can't ever be yourself. You always flexing, trying to be looking like the group or whatever
Yeah.
somebody on TV said, and it's like, dang.
Yeah.
So it's like when we develop that inner wealth, like we make better decisions externally for ourselves and our families, and so it's helpful in that way. And I think one of the biggest things is that it liberates us, right? Because the Enneagram helps us find awareness, which I found my racial trauma. Every Black person in America, I'm pretty sure, got some racial trauma,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It may be
Yeah.
a few, maybe, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
if they dive deep enough, you're gonna find that our culture it's built. It's like you operating in a system of racism already. So you know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So it's like you're going to catch it, rather directly or indirect. So it's like we just start to notice these patterns and we can start shifting them. And then we can be liberated, like liberated mentally, liberated emotionally, liberated somatically in the
Yes.
body. There's certain sensations that we have that we don't understand what's happening, what's going on. But if we learn to process and sit with them, they give us mad intelligence for what we should or should not do. Maybe I create a new boundary. Maybe I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like all these things. So I think it's I just love the word liberation for it, because especially as Black people, that's what we are yearning for, right? Yeah, like,
Absolutely.
you know, it's just so much. Like this is internal liberation, because it would shift how we do so much, right? It would heal us and just move us forward as a people. So that's why I see it doing a lot of good things for the Black community.
That's beautiful, brother. And I think about you and the approach that you take to the Enneagram. Because a lot of times you talk about our trauma, we're reacting to things, and you can never win a game just on defense and reacting, to your opponent. But I look at this work as being proactive. You're delving into the Enneagram. This is a system that allows us to see ourselves, like you said, in our patterns, and then you approach it from a business point of view. What made you take that approach as far as teacher Ginger Lapid Bogda?
Yeah, you got it.
Did I say it
You got
right?
it, bro.
Because there are many different schools of thought, and I think they all have value. But what is that the initial path you took going through from the business perspective?
Yeah, my first certification was through the Enneagram in Business, and that's Dr. Ginger Lapid Bogda, who's like one of my mentors. She's dope. Um, I took it business because, one, I went to school and got a business degree, so I was like, how can I use this in an organization? But I love organizational behavior. That's one
Mm-hmm.
thing. I love organizational behavior. Something about it really intrigues me about culture, because as a Black person, I understand the impact of culture, because we operate in and outside of our culture so much that it's like we see and feel the effects of it. I would say more than people who aren't in a minority setting, I guess, or a
Yeah,
marginalized setting. Let me say
yeah,
that, not minority, marginalized setting. So
yeah,
you start to recognize the difference, right? You're like, this is very different. Like, and this impacts me how I'm showing up and stuff. So org behavior always was important to me, and it was the first class in college I got like a D on like on a project because I had to learn how to study for real because I used to just get stuff. But I was like, oh crap, I got to actually read the book. Dang it. But the reason I approach it business, this is what's interesting about organizations. So organizations have the greatest impact on changing society.
Mm,
And so the ability to change an organization has the ability to really change massive groups of people and massive groups and do really good things in the world. So that's one of the reasons I took towards business, besides just liking business. It's like when you work with organizations, like they have the power to be able to shift things and do things in a way that's big and huge. Um, Compared to, doing it more one-on-one,
mhm.
or compared to sometimes the spiritual route, which I'm a very spiritual person at the same time. But with the business aspect, you touch so many lives in so many different ways, right? Anyone who's helped to be liberated and to start to get down to their purpose, because our type structure, and I didn't say this before, is connected also to our deeper purpose in life. It is, right?
Mm,
And so when people start to, if I can help a person heal, get through some trauma maybe, or just recognize so they can do something with it later, liberate, and then find a greater purpose for them to do some good in the world, oh man, shoot. And I can do it with an organization, and I'm
yeah,
a room full of 90 people. And
yeah.
so they're going back to their families, 90 different families supposedly, in the spread of doing something. That's one of the biggest reasons I like to do it with organizations, because of the greater impact that happens. And it's really, really enjoyable to watch people in workshops work through stuff and work on things and then figure out stuff and have these aha moments. Like, what? I communicate like that? Yeah, you do.
Mhm,
Everybody around you know it, but you don't, right? And so it's like, oh my goodness, right? And so it's really cool to see those aha moments and to
mhm.
really help people to truly develop and see themselves. Um, so that we can actually have better communities, better places, better spaces, man. Yeah,
You mentioned that our type structure is connected to our purpose. Can you kind of expound on that?
man. Yeah. So I don't necessarily believe in coincidences. Like you and me meeting, you and I meeting. Trying to get my English right over here. You and I meeting. I was like, wait, how does it work? Meeting is not a coincidence, man. Like it's not a coincidence. So there are things that are a deep part of us, if we can find out how to get out of the box, um, that like we are divinely connected in a way with whatever our type structure is. There's a divine connection
Mm,
through whatever strengths it can give us from our essence, right?
okay.
There's some part of it that is connected to our deeper essence, not the egoic part that's all about us and
Mm,
that's about separating people, dividing people. There's a part of us that is united at a much deeper spiritual level that seeks to unite and put good things and good works into the world, that's connected to our type structure, whatever it may be, right? It's those healthy parts. Now, the work to get there is something else. And we may do it, you know what I'm saying, like a little bit more and more. But I promise you, like, as you do the work more and more, it starts to unveil itself a little bit. You're like, oh my goodness. Oh,
mm,
this is my area. Like, this is,
yeah.
you start to find your thing in your area and you're like, oh, and it's not what other people just tell you it should be. You start to unlock. It's like playing a video game, bro. It's like unlocking levels. And you
Mm,
start to unlock a little bit more of your purpose and you start to see like, oh wow, I'm being called in some way to deliver this gift to this group or these people in this type of way. Whatever it is, right? Or
mhm,
these
mhm, mhm.
individuals, right? It may not be a group, it may be individuals, whatever it is, there's a way that is deeply divinely connected to all of us to do it, but it's just doing the work to get there. And the work, it ain't just necessarily like fun and pretty,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
find it liberating, I find it peaceful, and I find it healing when I do get to moments through certain parts. Yeah.
Mhm,
I
yeah.
hope that helped.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you're teaching now. You are instructing and helping people through your school. Can you talk to us a little bit about what led you to starting the school, and then just some of the, I guess, the highs of teaching?
Yeah, ooh, good one. So Kaizen Careers, I have a school, the Kaizen Complete Enneagram program, and I teach the Enneagram for 12 weeks. to people on Thursday nights for about 3 hours, and it's group based. I wanted to do something that's very important as we do the work. So people who want to use the Enneagram, either just for personal work or for professional work, either way, for you to become certified in the Enneagram, because trust me, I've been in a lot of certification programs. I have certification on certification on certification from different schools, different teachers. Some of them don't even agree with each other, and that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
but I have, a vast amount of knowledge already from them. But I also saw things that they were necessarily weren't doing in a way, like, or this program may be missing this little element or this little element, right? And so one thing is very important, especially for us as Black people and anybody who has a marginalized identity. How do I make sure the space is safe enough so people can share and come authentically, right? And how do I teach people how to facilitate in a way that you are creating a space, right, where there are boundaries? So if someone crosses it, we've already established it, and now we can have a conversation. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? And address it. Because if you don't fully show up, it's going to be hard to fully dive in and fully grow, right? So that's one of the big parts. At the very beginning, I set the boundaries for the whole rest of the thing, right? So that everybody knows the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
The next point is, one, you're coming from a Black man's standpoint. You're not coming from it. Our standpoint is rare
Absolutely.
in this space, bro.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
you're not getting many people who understand our standpoint and also seeing the other spaces in the Enneagram and their knowledge. So even the way we deliver, like where we talk about it, right? The way our understanding of it, the way that we see it, and maybe sometimes the type structure is only um, in certain books only describing the prototypical white person in that type in a certain culture, right? Where
Absolutely.
it's like it's missing the nuance of understanding how culture impacts a type. They show up very differently, right? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like our culture, any woman who's assertive, all of a sudden they got a type as an 8, and all that type of stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
like, no. So it's like one, understanding that, helping people to go deeper within my program within that. But one of the most important things, you don't leave my certification course unless you're working on yourself. And every week I have them work on themselves. There's literally growth work every single week because it's like that's another thing that I don't know, annoys me a little bit. It used to annoy me a lot, but there's certain things I can't hold on to too much. Like I just had to
Yeah.
let stuff go. But there's people who have a lot of head knowledge about the Enneagram, but don't have much experience, or they aren't
Mm-hmm.
working on themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
they'll like know a whole bunch, man, and they might know more, quote unquote, know in like in the mind a little bit more than me, but they don't know how to work with anybody's pattern. They don't know how to work people through stuff.
Yeah.
They don't know how to help them grow. They don't, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that's the most important part. It's not the important part of just like, yeah, we got to identify it, but let's not get stuck in over identifying. Now
Yeah.
we got to work through how these things came to be. And so like that becomes the part of my school that's so important. It's like you're going to leave with understanding how the Enneagram works, how the types work, but also what's going on with you and what work do you need to continuously do if you're going to take the work out in the world to be healthy, to be healthier, to work with. Like you got to do all that. So I bring all of that into the certification, and I'm proud to say that my graduates, the ones who graduate, they're doing good things and they know their stuff. So if they go to different certifications with different school, like teachers know my students know their stuff, right? And they're constantly doing their work. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes me proud. Like I say a big difference. It's more intimate because it's not like a huge place,
Mm-hmm.
a huge school like some of these schools. But like we get to the real thing. You got to work on yourself and you got to learn the Enneagram. And we're gonna go in some. We're gonna touch the heart. You're gonna be connected to people around the world who you never knew, but
Mm-hmm.
now you like feel like you best friends,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can speak a language to each other that is so intimate, that you don't get everywhere else. So it's powerful.
I like that because, and you mentioned that there are a lot of how can I say it? There are quite a few. I won't say a lot. There are quite a few people that are teaching out of their ego. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
Like
yes.
just if it doesn't, if we're not using it ourselves, then it's vanity, and we're
Yep.
just spewing out knowledge, but it's not in a usable model. So I love that. Because that's the most important thing, man, is transformation. You mentioned the word transformation earlier, and
Yeah.
that's the whole point to it. So, I know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a major part of your work. Tell me, what has been your experience in coming into this space, the Enneagram, which was primarily an older, it was older
Hmm.
white people
Yeah,
initially walking in there, just calling it for what it is. And now, this call, they're calling out and asking people to enter this work. And like you said, in 2020, all of a sudden, like, oh, you know what? There is racism. Hey, come here, black man. Come here, black
exactly.
woman. Let's talk about this stuff. There was an awakening and or an acknowledgement of racism. So what has that been like? Beginning and walking into that space, and now from the time that it's really started and then into this very moment.
Yeah, man. And this is where I talk about how like our purpose is aligned with our Enneagram type, and the essence of us is aligned with the higher sides of what our Enneagram type is. So when I came into the Enneagram space with my podcast, I didn't honestly, I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I didn't want to be just the black Enneagram teacher or the black Enneagram. I didn't want to be pigeonholed, bro. So I internally, and plus I hadn't healed from some stuff that I didn't know was there. So I didn't overly focus on like the particularities or the specifics of being black and the Enneagram. I didn't focus on
Yeah,
it because I was afraid of being pigeonholed.
yeah,
And so I was like, oh man, right? And there's parts of me that maybe I hadn't fully healed or fully learned to love because of society, of trauma and stuff like that. So at first, that's how it started, but it was crazy, right? So I had no initial thoughts of being like, I'm going to be doing DEI and Enneagram, bro.
mhm.
I was like, because they're kind of like, woo, race wars, this might get crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but all of a sudden, I met a white woman who was doing the work. She's already been doing the work, named Sharon K. Ball. Really, like we're colleagues now. I met her and she talked to me about this company she was working with. And she was going to teach them Enneagram, psychological safety as well, because she's a therapist. And she was like, we're putting a program together for them called Advocacy in Action, right? And it's a program to help the black talent inside of Dow Chemical, which is the company, and it's going to help them partner them with a person who's in like the top level, who are all white males except for like a few white females, partner them with them. But it's about getting them to a higher position because there's a ceiling here. There's a ceiling for black talent, clearly. Like the pipeline is not right, and they're losing black talent. They were. So she was like, I just got this. She was like, and I think you could be perfect for being a part of this in the future. And at the time, the very first one she invited me to, I didn't speak. I wasn't speaking. I knew the Enneagram, but I had not done all of the work inside of the DEI space. But she invited me there. And I thought, that's interesting. Wow. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting there. And I'm also sitting there because I got so frustrated one time of things that was going on in the room that I had to walk out because I was going to say or do something that probably wouldn't have been professional. Um, that's how hot I was about an issue that they were talking about that they weren't addressing well. I'm talking about the room, not
yeah.
sharing. But so after time, I started to go to a few more. She invited me to a few more, and I started to grow. I started to learn. I started to become better Enneagram facilitator, teacher, and then I started to do small parts of teaching. And then all of a sudden, man, it progresses to like now we are co-facilitating.
Mm,
And not only are we co-facilitating, we're crushing it in this company because we actually show the DEI really well between each other, right? And we're delivering like workshops for them that are actually transforming the whole culture. Like not, it hits the bottom line, which you got to hit the bottom line for
right.
organizations, but it's
Yeah.
changing the bottom line. You got black talent now moving up in the organization, not just black talent. Now she does work also inside of other pockets of marginalized communities in
Mm,
America that's helping them move into positions that they've been should have been in because of their talent, right? And how well that they work in their years of tenure. It just was nobody was in that room to say, oh, such and such is really good. Let's give them an interview, right?
yeah.
So, man, so like it started to lead in a way that I was like, wow, I never expected to be doing Enneagram and DE and I work. Like, as a seven, I just want to stay in la la joy happy land. Like
Yeah.
that's my ego, right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah.
But there's a gift in my sevenness and me and the interception of me being black and a male
Mm-hmm.
and being a seven,
Mm-hmm.
that like when I show up in a space, I have the ability, if I do my work well enough and I'm grounded enough, because of the ability to have levity when I speak and share stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
if I'm grounded and I'm serious, I have the ability to bring serious topics in a way that will get into the ears and the minds of people who may not receive it or become defensive. I have a way of doing it, right? Even a way of being indirect that's powerful enough to help someone start to change maybe the way they think about something. And so I started to notice, I was like, oh my goodness, I never thought I would ever do this, right? This topic is super
Mm-hmm.
serious. I got to get super grounded. My body feel all weird on the inside, but I
Mm-hmm.
can hold this space because I'm doing
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to impact big organizations, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and share that. So, man, this is like this DE and I part, this mission, dude, it's so big, it's so vast, but like when you see people start to shift, and I mean people shift from like they don't believe racism but all of a sudden at the end they're like champion. They're like
Mm-hmm.
on the side, like, what can I do now? Let's
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. We got to change this. I didn't know this was happening in my company. It's like, oh, dang, you know? So I've been able to move and change organizations and people's lives like that. You know what I'm saying? That has shown me that, like, oh, dude, that stuff you was running from, that you were trying to avoid talking about and being fully you, that's the stuff you need, the world needs. You have a purpose in that. And I'm like, oh, dang, okay, all right, dang it. So, um, that has shifted me in a lot of different ways, and I think a lot of times when it's like aligned with our purpose, because I love Black culture. I love making sure that we get what we need. Black activism, making sure. The thing is, I don't have like my ego isn't intertwined in DE and I at all, bro. Like it's not like I get something out of it because there's some people that some ego structures that are like fired up about doing
Yeah.
it, but there's a part of the ego that wants it like more than like the impact that they can have on the world. It's just a little bit, right? And it's
Yeah.
tricky to say and it's hard to say because people don't want to recognize it and it's scary, but it's real. And for me, bruh, a lot of times I don't get like mentally stimulated to be like, ooh, we finna go do a DEI workshop. I'd be like, let me ground myself, let me
Yeah.
breathe. I mean, when I get into it, I'm into it though. I'm passionate, but I don't have like let's go get it. I'd be like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, where are you leading me now? So
And I see that because you're able to maneuver. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? You're not bogged down by a lot of times our trauma bogs us down to the point where we'll walk in a room and put ourselves in a disadvantage because we're thinking, oh, okay, I got to get in this space right here. And just so I feel what you're saying. Like it's not a personal axe to grind for you, so to speak. Um, I you know I'm closing, man. If you would, I would love to bring you back and talk about Egypt, but I think that's a whole episode within itself, right there. I would love to nerd out because I would love to hear about your trip. But in closing, you are a member of the IEA board,
Yeah.
and tell me what is the benefit of people of color joining the IEA,
Ooh.
and yeah, man, and what's your experience been like on the board?
Man. Ooh. Wow. That was some good questions. Dang. All right. So I'm on the IEA board. We have a global board. We're about probably, I don't know, about 12 people right now, all over the world. We still need more diversity. But uh, experience wise, it is one that has been growing for me, that has challenged me in a lot of ways. Because one, there's a part of me, because I'm also the youngest person as well, maybe the youngest ever to be on the board. That's another thing I don't even recognize sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
so I come from it from a whole different angle and a different energy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and approaching it also from like my prior work standpoint. Like I like to do things and get things done quick, and I'm a seven. I like when you put it on my plate, I like to take all of it and just run with it
Yeah,
and not be like micromanaged.
yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but so that has been a personal struggle for me that I've been working on because it's like you're working with a group of people and some stuff I have to not care as much about at times because it would just take too much energy from me. I'm like, okay, right. And then I have to see where my ego is maybe connected to stuff or over attached. I'd be like, gotta let that go, Milton. That's your ego.
Yeah.
Um, but so for me, it has been because of Dr. Egerton,
Yeah.
who we both know, the
Yeah.
Enneagram teacher. She's amazing. She's one of my mentors as well. Like, she's one of the people that championed for me to be on the board. It has been a place where I've seen people try to shift and understand diversity, equity, and inclusion a little bit more. Because even though, like, it's a global board, we still, like I said, got to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion and understanding what it truly means,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And especially understanding what it means for Black people.
Yeah.
Like, like you said at the very beginning of this episode, the experience Black people in America have is crazily different from other people in the world, including African people, right? It's
Absolutely.
very different,
Absolutely.
very different.
Yeah.
So, so trying to help them to understand that as well, it can be a challenge, but I see people working and being curious, which I appreciate. Um, so I think one of the biggest benefits to actually being joining the IEA as a Black person is the ability to be connected internationally to people doing really amazing things.
Mm.
Like the places that they are taking the Enneagram right now, bro, like mixing it with sexuality, mixing it with deep science, mixing it with parenting, adolescence, whatever happened. Dude, it's crazy the way they're taking the places they're taking it. So the fascination and the ability for us to find more things in the Enneagram that we can take back to our communities or use in our professions, it's high. Its level is high. Like there's so many resources adapted to it. Are we working on a website? Yes, we got to do things better, but
Hmm.
there are so many avenues, and then the connections that you make, right? The connections are so powerful.
Yeah.
So I went to the conference, and shout out to you. You coming to the conference this year? Woo woo.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
hey, I went to the global conference 2 years ago. Well, no, take it back, 4 years ago, pre-pandemic. Um, and they were the president at the time was super excited. I didn't know he was the president, but he was super excited. You could tell when a person excited because you Black, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, it's a Black person! Make sure you greet them well." You know. Um. So, bro, I was like, "Can you calm down? I'm just human. Like, calm down. How are you doing? It's so good to meet you." And I was like, oh, "Okay," but I found another group of people of color. Majority of us Black, but people of color, BIPOC people, even from around the world.
Mm.
And we're still connected. We still have a text thread we send after 4 years, dude, 4 or 5 years. So it's like, and I've done business with people from that group already, right?
Mm.
So you find these connections and they start to have these lifelong opportunities. And even maybe you travel to their city or their place and they're like, hey, you can stay here. You know what I'm saying? You can save you some
Mm.
money, or
Mm.
here's some recommendation, here's some resources you may need. So your network grows in a way that you don't usually get inside of other organizations because
Mm.
this thing is global. So you start to find connections like that, man, which has been, I mean, I can literally everybody from that original group, just about, I have personally done either some business with them, been on a Zoom call with them, went to the establishment where they do stuff, or made money with them, bro. So
Mm.
it's kind
Okay.
of like there's so many avenues for that. And this is one of the few places I feel that like you can start to truly, especially in our big events when we get together, you can really be yourself. Like, I mean, really be yourself and feel safe and feel seen, feel heard, and feel loved. And when we get together, right, and do
Yeah.
so, that's one of the biggest things that I think people will find like a Black person for joining it, right? Because we gonna find each other in the room. Be like, oh,
Oh
who is
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, oh, hey, how you doing? What's your name? And then we go out to eat at a Jamaican restaurant because this is what
Yeah.
happened in Oakland. And
Okay.
then we just hang out and we go to different places and different things, bro. And it just becomes like, you know what I'm saying? You feel like you really fit in. And
Mm.
you feel like you really feel seen for all of you, not just part of you, not just because you're Black or because you're whatever. And dude, it's healing, it's helpful, and you feel loved. So, I definitely would recommend the IEA in that way for Black people to come to, like, especially the events that are in person, but also the teachings we have online. I'm the events committee chair, and so my events be fire. Like, I don't play with it. So
No
if I
doubt.
throw an event It's gonna have energy, right? I can't say that for everybody else on our board, be honest. But when I throw an event, that joker gonna be fire. You're gonna be mentally stimulated. You're gonna be emotionally excited, and we're gonna be in that thing learning something deep. So hey, that's just what I'm
For
saying.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm looking forward to, man, meeting you in person, Dr. Egerton, and just some of the great people that I've admired from afar, man, in this work. And some who I've had conversations with, man. I appreciate you putting the bug in my ear. It might have been 2 years ago. It might have been during
Yep.
it was during COVID. So it's like 2 years
Yep.
ago. You were like, hey man, I need you to come to this in 2023. And I was just like, at the time, I was like, okay, yeah, all right, cool. And things are working out, man. So I'm looking forward to meeting y'all, man. And brother, I appreciate your time. And hey man, thank you. Is there anything? Of course. How do we get in contact with you? If those want to know more about your school or connect with you, speaking opportunities, please let us know.
Yeah. So info at kaizencareers.com. That's KaizenCareers.com. So that's info, info, at kaizencareers.com is where you can email me if you got questions or anything like that. You can check out my website. I just redid the Joker last week, by the way. This is great timing.
Word.
So kaizencareers.com, and everything you need to fill out an inquiry to find out about the school. I got a free ebook on there if you want to get practical with the Enneagram. It's all on there. So if you go there, you can find out everything else. I got an IG and all that fun stuff too. And yeah, and then my podcast, Do It for the Gram, Enneagram podcast. So any of those ways, people can connect with me, find me. And as far as speaking, right now I just got organizations. Oh, I'm speaking at the conference, by the way. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm speaking at the conference.
Right.
And we're talking about how do you work with recognizing and working with whiteness in our culture, right?
Mm.
And so me and a colleague, Chelsea Forbrook, we're going to break down how can you, the same way, very similar way we work with awareness in the Enneagram, is the same way we can work with undoing unhealthy whiteness, as we call it, in our culture or within ourselves, so that we are more inclusive. Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Thank you for your time. Milton Stewart. I'm going to put as they say in podcast world, I'll put your information in the show notes so you can contact me. This is Ahmad Wazir, Total Confidence Podcast. I hope you enjoy this treasure, Milton Stewart, that we have, one of our own. And thank you for listening. Talk to you soon.